Out front next, we have breaking news. ABC is yanking Jimmy Kimmel's show indefinitely, after remarks about Charlie Kirk. And this is just breaking. We have the very latest, really shocking news just breaking here tonight. As the FBI director today was accused of an Epstein cover-up, Kash Patel repeatedly testifying he can't release the documents. The courts, though, have said otherwise, as Trump tonight is facing protests and questions about Epstein, even on his trip to London. And tonight, a sheriff's warning to Tyler Robinson's romantic partner, the sheriff telling friends and family of Charlie Kirk's alleged killer to, quote, lay low. That sheriff is my guest. Let's go out front. And good evening, I'm ERIN Burnett, and out front tonight, we do begin with this very late breaking news. Jimmy Kimmel's late night talk show has been pulled off the air indefinitely. ABC is just making this announcement about Jimmy Kimmel Live, just hours after the Trump-aligned chairman of the FCC went on a podcast threatening to take action against ABC and its parent, Disney, about Jimmy Kimmel, specifically over these comments by Jimmy Kimmel 2 nights ago. What Jimmy Kimmel did, I'm going to play it for you, but I'll tell you what he did. He suggested that the suspected killer of Charlie Kirk might have been a pro-Trump Republican.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Of course, he didn't celebrate it, didn't do anything like that. He just came out and talked about it. And you saw what he just said. He said, we hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize the kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. That's the direct quote of what Jimmy Kimmel said. So why does that warrant this? Right? Again, it wasn't even a celebration. And I know people are very torn on that and what is free speech or not free speech. But here is what the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, just warned.
You know, when you look at the conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. Obviously, look, there's calls for Kimmel to be fired. I think, you know, you could certainly see a path forward for suspension over this. And again, you know, the FCC is going to have remedies that we could look at.
Well, he said it, and then it happened, a suspension. Note he called Kimmel's words the sickest conduct possible. Again, Kimmel wasn't coming out. He wasn't celebrating anything that happened to Charlie Kirk. He was simply speculating as to what side of the political spectrum his killer came from. What's happening with Kimmel's show, though, comes in the context, of course, of the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. CBS announced it was canceling that. Colbert was a longtime and vocal critic of President Trump. Now, CBS said that this was due to financial reasons, which many, of course, have doubted. In this case, it doesn't appear that such a fig leaf is even present, right? It is pretty clear this is what it looks like. Elizabeth Wagmeister is out front. And Elizabeth, it is stunning news. There is no attempt to say that this is anything other than what it appears to be. Kimmel came out, he spoke. The FCC chair said it warranted a possible suspension, and now his show is on indefinite suspension. What else do you know?
This is a huge shock in the world of media, in the world of entertainment. So let me take you a few steps back, but this has been playing out literally minute by minute, just happening, ERIN. So Nexstar, which is one of the country's biggest station owners, they said that they were going to preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live after the FCC came out with those comments on that podcast that you just referenced. Then I reached out to ABC, and here's the statement that they gave me on the record, ERIN. They say, quote, Jimmy Kimmel Live will be preempted indefinitely. Short and sweet, but direct and to the point. Now, this is Jimmy Kimmel. This is the face of ABC. For this to happen so quickly with really, again, no explanation from ABC, just it is what it is. It is stunning. It is shocking. I just saw Jimmy Kimmel 3 nights ago at the Emmy Awards, at the after parties, and he was rubbing shoulders with the who's who of Hollywood, obviously still in good graces. Now, I know that you played Kimmel's comments that he had made about Charlie Kirk's suspected killer, but I also want to read to you some comments that came the day Charlie Kirk was murdered from Jimmy Kimmel. Here's what he tweeted. He said, quote, "Instead of the angry finger pointing, can we just for one day agree that it is horrible and monstrous to shoot another human? On behalf of my family, we send love to the Kirks and to all of the children, parents, and innocents who fall victim to senseless gun violence." So obviously, he has spoken out about this, the day that it happened with some grace, but it's no secret to anyone that Jimmy Kimmel has been a foe of President Trump. They have been going back and forth at each other for years. So again, not a secret that he is not, at the top of President Trump's favorite list for sure.
Well, no, and President Trump has obviously gotten what the administration wants in this case. As we said, it's an indefinite suspension. Elizabeth, please stay with me, and I know you're literally, texting with your sources as we speak. So please stay with us as you're doing that. I want to bring in Brian Stelter and Bill Carter, of course, long-time media career analyst, so many decades at the New York Times. Okay, so let me just ask you, Brian, what more you're learning about this just in these minutes. I mean, it truly dropped as, I think, a shock to anybody who heard it, even if they knew that Brendan Carr, the pro-Trump chief of the FCC, had made the comments he made on that podcast. I don't think there's anybody who literally thought within hours Jimmy Kimmel would be gone.
Right, absolutely right. In fact, this was very sudden this afternoon after Carr spoke out on that far-right podcast. Then some stations that are owned by other companies but affiliated with ABC started to complain to ABC. We know one of them, Nexstar, which has about 24 stations with the ABC logo and all the ABC programming. Nexstar publicly announced that they were going to drop Kimmel's show indefinitely. Within a matter of minutes, we heard from Disney that the show was being pulled altogether. That suggests to me that other station owners were probably also getting scared. Other station owners were probably also coming up with backup plans not to air Kimmel's show. But even though we're talking about comedy, this is so serious, Erin. Yeah. America is a less free place if late night comedians cannot do and say what they want. Of course, they can be tuned out. People can change the channel. That's how we vote. That's how we have our say in America. But this really does have a chilling effect across the American media. And it's not just me saying it. We've heard from the group FIRE in the past few minutes, the free speech group FIRE, saying, quote, "The government pressured ABC and ABC caved. Quote, we cannot be a country where late night talk show hosts serve at the pleasure of the president, but until institutions grow a backbone and learn to resist government pressure, that is the country we are." And just one more note, Aaron, I've heard from Brendan Carr in the past few minutes. He's very pleased about Nexstar deciding to preempt the show. He has not officially reacted to ABC's decision yet. But when I told him about ABC's decision to go ahead and basically, this is a cancellation unless the show ever comes back, he did send me a GIF. He sent me a celebratory meme as his reaction, Aaron.
I mean, Bill, let me just ask you about where we are in this moment, okay? Because fear has a domino effect. You have a late night comedian who his first reaction to the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk, as Elizabeth just laid out, was to say, my wife and I's thoughts go out to that family. What a horrible thing, right? Made very clear where he stood. By the way, hardcore free speech advocates would say that isn't even a caveat that is needed in this conversation, okay? But I'm not even, but I'm just making the point that he had taken that stance. He comes out the other night and he merely, as a late night comedian could do, said, and by the way, no one knows the full facts about this assassin, and says, well, it could be this, and that's what he says. Could be MAGA. And to that, he gets this response from the FCC chair. I want to play a little bit more of you, Bill, a little bit more of Brendan Carr here from the FCC for you. Here he is.
They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
Again, Bill, there's no fig leaf there.
Yeah.
You can do this the easy way or the hard way. I don't think it gets any more painfully and disgustingly obvious than that.
Does that not sound like a mob thing to you? That sounds like a mob thing to me.
Yes.
You know, it's a definite open threat. And the FCC is basically saying, we have control of broadcast licenses, and we will use that against you if you don't play ball with us. And it's really a serious moment. This is a serious moment. This is ABC basically saying, we can't stand up to this. We have to back away. We can't stand up to this. And every time this happens, it means the next thing is in the offing. They're not going to back off. This means you can't say anything without us coming after you. I think they're promising that. They're basically sending the message out there. It's going to be this way. If you don't play ball with us, if you criticize us, if you use your airwaves in ways we don't like, we have your license and we can take it away. It's really a dangerous, dangerous time.
Elizabeth, it also comes in the context of, I mean, I mentioned Colbert, right? And now we're talking about Kimmel. But you have Trump talking about lawsuits that settled in his favor by news organizations. Yesterday, making it clear not only does he add all of that into this, his victories, but also that he wants to go after others. Here was the exchange as he's on his way to England that he had with ABC News, longtime, top of the top ABC News White House correspondent Jonathan Karl. I'll play it.
She'll probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart. Maybe they'll come after ABC.
He was talking about free speech there. I mean, Elizabeth, where does this all lead, right? I mean, this is, I understand we were in a domino situation, but this one is seismic.
This is seismic. And if you had told me a few weeks ago that Stephen Colbert's show was no longer going to exist, I would have said you're crazy. If you had told me yesterday or an hour ago that Jimmy Kimmel Live was going to be pulled off the air indefinitely, I would have said, in no world is that going to happen. So we are really in unprecedented times. And trust me, the people at ABC did not want to pull Jimmy Kimmel Live. He is a favorite of that company. As I said, he is the face of that company. He doesn't just host his late night show, he also hosts and produces a series of other projects for them. So these really are unprecedented times. And I have reached out, by the way, to Kimmel's personal representative. I have not heard back anything yet. I have also asked some additional questions. Of course, in that initial statement that I obtained, it said that it has been pulled indefinitely. That's not a cancellation. But to Brian and Bill's point, it's almost hard to see a path forward. It's hard to see a world in which President Trump says, sure, I would love for Jimmy Kimmel to come back on the air. I love the guy. I mean, they hate each other's guts. Let's be honest about that. So I have asked, is this a cancellation? Are there any plans? Do you know how much longer, how long it will be pulled off the air? So all these questions are unanswered now. I would imagine that the executives over at Disney and ABC are asking the same questions as us, and that their minds are scrambled as well right now.
Brian, in terms of where we are at this very moment, you know the general or the very specific taping schedule of Jimmy Kimmel, right? And when they tape, when they get ready. So we're at 7:13 Eastern time. What would he normally be doing tonight? What are they doing? What is he doing?
Right, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, as the true late night scholar, normally Kimmel's show would be about to be taped, is getting ready, he's preparing right now, and maybe that's why we haven't heard from him yet. Like I said, this escalated very quickly, really just in the last hour or so, so it is possible the audience was already starting to be loaded in and things like that.
Yes.
A little more time,
yes, it'd be a little more time.
Erin, it occurs to me.
Go ahead,
I'm interested because are they sending everyone home? You know, what's happening on the scene? You know, the show would have been taping within the next hour, so people would be there. Yes, this is very abrupt, very abrupt.
And this is all about jawboning. It's all about public pressure. You know, actually revoking FCC licenses is extremely difficult. I wrote about this last fall when candidate Donald Trump was talking on the campaign trail about wanting to punish stations by taking away their licenses. And throughout the history of the country, ever since we've had broadcast television, license revocations are extraordinarily rare. Once you've got one, you're pretty much guaranteed to keep it. So the threat is not that the FCC is actually going to take away a license. It's about the public noise. It's about the shame and embarrassment. It's about Brendan Carr going on podcasts and embarrassing ABC. You know, there's a term for this. It's jawboning, and that's what we've seen happen today in a very real way. Trump vowed retribution on the campaign trail, and he's getting it. He's getting it against entertainers and comedians. But Erin, for every reaction, there is a counter reaction. Stephen Colbert has already been joking about getting hired somewhere else. Those jokes mask a very real intention, right? Yeah. Where will he get picked up instead? If Kimmel parts ways with ABC, and again, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Kimmel's contract is coming due soon. Kimmel will probably end up somewhere else. And if big, old-fashioned mainstream media companies don't have the guts to employ these people, then we're going to see startups start to flourish. You know, we talk about the Substack era with people launching newsletters and live streams on YouTube. We're going to see more of that if these old-fashioned media companies can't stand a little bit of pressure from the president.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it is stunning to see such a thing happen and to show this world that we're living in. Van Jones is joining me now on the phone. So, Van, you know, all of a sudden you see this headline, Jimmy Kimmel put on hold indefinitely by ABC News after the head of the FCC goes on a far-right podcast and says we can do this the easy way or the hard way. And do you think in your mind it's possible this might not be real?
I don't know what's real or what's not real. I do know that a news organization anywhere in the world has a responsibility to stand up to government bullying, to government censorship. That is what we do. That is why we exist. Not to knuckle under, not to do what we're told, but to stand up and to say, listen, if you want to pull these licenses, then we're going to go to court. And we'll be in the court of public opinion. But you don't get to go on a podcast and set policy for American media, for an American media institution that's been around a lot longer than me, you, or Donald Trump. This is a red line that has been crossed for our industry, for the First Amendment, for the right of people to speak. There was nothing hateful about what was said, and even hateful speech is protected. This is not acceptable. If you are going to run a media organization that's called a news organization, you have to stand up to government bullying anywhere in the world, and certainly in the United States.
Well, the job should be to, speak truth to power, even when there are people who don't like the word truth anymore. All right, Van, stay with us. I want to bring in the Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia because he is the ranking member on the House Oversight Committee. And Congressman, I appreciate your time. We had planned to talk about something very different and obviously very important tonight in the Epstein files. This news, though, has just broken, and it is of utmost importance at this very moment. May I just ask you, what's your response when you hear what ABC has done after the FCC chair said we could do this the easy way or the hard way?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we are all just learning about what just happened, not having all the information, but what I'm hearing is pretty outrageous. Look, we can all, of course, agree that political violence is horrific. What happened to Charlie Kirk is horrific. But the idea that someone is going to get pulled off a news program, off a channel that's supposed to be independent, and that ABC is making this decision because of possible political pressure through the president is both stunning and outrageous. And so I think that as information comes out, we've got to understand what exactly happened, who made these decisions. And there's a lot of questions right now. I think the foundation of a democracy is also having a strong, independent news organizations and a strong, independent media. And it's a huge, important part of democracy. So I'm honestly pretty stunned. I mean, what happened with Stephen Colbert, what's happening right now with Jimmy Kimmel, this cannot be a pattern in the United States. So we've got to stand up and allow the media to be independent.
Well, it is unfortunately a pattern now. We're gonna queue up again in just a second what Brendan Carr, the FCC chair, said on that far right, that right-wing podcast earlier today. But first, just because you made the point, Congressman, that what Jimmy Kimmel said was not celebratory or hate speech. Which it wasn't. And again, I will make the point that there are some, including people like Ted Cruz, who came out yesterday and said even that speech is protected in the United States. So I'm not trying to put up that would be some sort of an excuse. I am just pointing out that's not what he said. I want to play again for anyone just joining to understand what it was that Jimmy Kimmel said that prompted the FCC chair to say we could do this the easy or the hard way. Here's Jimmy Kimmel.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Now, Congressman, I'm just going to take a step back and say, after January 6th, you had, many on the right saying, no, it's an act, it's Antifa, right? These speculations about who's to blame for what, and it's not what it looks like, they are everywhere. On every horrible act, okay? And Jimmy Kimmel just came out and put that in his monologue. I think anybody would say that's obviously not hate speech, but obviously people on the right, Brendan Carr, didn't like it. When you see that Jimmy Kimmel is gone because of that, does that even hit harder home to you?
Look, I'm honestly, this is very concerning. I think first, Jimmy Kimmel is a late night host. He's a comedian. We have the First Amendment in this country. Folks have the right to say what's on their minds, and certainly in a monologue on a late night show. And I think anyone that's going to listen and watch that clip, I mean, it's pretty clear that this is a direct attack on free speech. And it's one thing for all of us to unite and talk about political violence and denouncing political violence. It's another now to target people who you may not agree their opinion with, or that you don't like what they have to say. What's happening right now in these attacks on universities, attacks on people in their job because we don't like what they say, or we're policing every word. This is an extreme example now, and another direct attack on the media. And I think one thing is important to be said at this moment. Yeah. Donald Trump has been, in a systematic way, attacking the media, causing harm, impacting the way people believe and interact with with news gathering, what people are saying, and he continues and continues to tear media and media institutions down. That overall will harm our country. It's going to harm our world. People need to be able to trust the media. And what this ABC's actions here at this moment, I think we have a lot of questions about what happened.
So, is there anything Congress can do about it? The FCC chair goes out on a podcast. He says, do it or else. It gets done. Is there anything you can do? You're the top Democrat on the Oversight Committee.
Look, I will tell you this. I have a lot of questions, and I won't be the only one. I think there's no question that there are going to be some conversations in the Congress very quickly about this and this pattern that continues on from the president. And you cannot have the FCC making and pushing these political decisions, let alone on a podcast, on a podcast that you're sharing an idea with another right-wing commentator, and then all of a sudden you're implementing this, which is a huge impact. I mean, there are, as you know, millions of people watch Jimmy Kimmel, know Jimmy Kimmel, interact with what's happening every night, and to somehow now pull the show because we didn't like his opinion, not because he said something that was hateful or that somehow encouraged political violence. I think this is a very concerning night for American media and democracy. We've got to watch this very carefully.
Yes, and I appreciate your time, Congressman. Thank you very much. And an important distinction you're drawing, again, between what would have been a hateful thing to say and just speculation, his opinion. Again, as I've pointed out, Ted Cruz, your colleague Don Bacon, all came out and said even hate speech in their view would be protected, right? It was a bipartisan protection. Again, that's not what this was. This is just pure opinion, but I want to make the point. Thank you so much, Congressman. I appreciate your time. I want to go straight now to Ana Gomez because she is a commissioner of the Federal Communications Commission who was appointed by President Biden. And Commissioner Gomez, let me just ask you what you even know about all of this from your position. What do you even know about how all this happened? Brendan Carr going on that podcast. What can you tell us?
Yeah, well, I know probably as much, if not less, than what you do. I understand that there was a podcast, and there was the opinion that broadcasters should not broadcast these types of jokes. Which, let me just say this. An inexcusable act of political violence by one disturbed individual must never be exploited as justification for broader censorship or control. And what you're seeing here is this administration is increasingly using the weight of government power to suppress lawful expression, not because it glorifies violence or breaks the law, but because it challenges those in power and reflects views they oppose.
All right. So, Anna, let me just try to break this down a little bit, because you're sitting here, obviously, as somebody who, you're a commissioner of the FCC, right? You work with Brendan Carr. So he goes out on this podcast, okay? And he says something very specific. I'm just going to play again the explicit threat that was made. Here he is.
And they have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
The easy way or the hard way, right? There's no, frankly, obviously, there's no even attempt at ambiguity here, right? It's just a blatant, bald, direct threat. What do you say to that? What do you say to Brendan Carr? I mean, he's your colleague. You guys are on the FCC together. You work with him. He went out and said this.
So I think we really need to make very clear that the First Amendment does not allow us, the FCC, to tell broadcasters what they can broadcast. Personally, I'd rather not speak ill of the dead, but I understand Jimmy Kimmel is a satirist and a comedian. I saw the clip. He did not make any unfounded claims, but he did make a joke, one that others may even find crude. But that is neither illegal nor grounds for companies to capitulate to this administration in ways that violate the First Amendment. And we must be careful not to allow the government to punish critics simply because of content. This sets a dangerous new precedent, and companies must stand firm against any efforts to trade away First Amendment freedoms.
So Anna, when Brendan Carr goes out and said the FCC, that we can do this the easy way or the hard way, and talks about revoking broadcast licenses. Okay, for people out there who don't understand the machinations of the FCC and exactly how it works, if ABC had not caved and had kept Jimmy Kimmel on the air, and Brendan Carr went ahead and actually went forward to do this, to try to revoke a broadcast license for ABC, goes to the FCC, you're a sitting member, you are there are others. What actually would happen?
So the FCC does not have the ability to revoke licenses just because we don't like what is being said on a particular broadcast, especially by a satirist like Jimmy Kimmel. So I don't think this commission could have legally revoked a license based on this particular episode. What we keep hearing by this administration is that broadcasters have to serve the public interest. And it's undefined what we mean by the public interest. It is true that we have a public interest obligation to serve communities, but it doesn't mean that anything we don't like is against the public interest. And what I think we need to do as a commission is we need to issue a rulemaking where we say, here is specifically what we mean by serving the public interest. Because just saying it's against the public interest because we don't like particular content is not enough. And I think it's very important to know, we don't have, I'm sorry, we don't have an exception to the, I was going to say, we don't have an exception to the First Amendment for broadcast licensees. They are still protected by our First Amendment, and free expression is non-negotiable. It marks the line between freedom and oppression, and we must defend it without compromise.
So, Anna, I just wanted to ask you about Brendan Carr here, but Brian Stelter, my colleague, he was just on a moment ago. I don't know if you heard him, but talking about this news, actually asked Brendan Carr for comment on these developments. And Brendan Carr responded to Brian Stelter. I'll show you what he did. He sent him back a meme from the TV show The Office of the show characters celebrating. Okay, so that just came from the commissioner of the FCC, Brendan Carr. A meme, I don't know if you can see it, Anna. That's his response to this.
You know, I don't think we should be celebrating violating our First Amendment rights and weakening our democracy.
So, Anna, what can you do about it? Again, to try to explain to us what happens in the FCC. Right? I mean, Brendan Carr has made it clear where he stands. He put out a threat. He got an outcome that he now puts out a meme from The Office celebrating. And he's not going anywhere. What do you do about it?
So what I am doing is I am doing whatever I can to use my position to call attention to this administration's campaign of censorship and control. It is what I can do. I can use my platform to tell people that we need to protect our democracy and freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of association. All of that is there for a reason, and it is an important foundation for our democracy, and we must speak up and push back.
All right, Anna, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Anna Gomez, as I said, is a sitting current commissioner of the FCC.